Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. At first let's go and review the front lines update. Well, the Krynky drama is over. Ukraine withdrew the forces from this part of the shore. Ukraine kept the positions quite successfully for many months. And Russians were not able to kick Ukrainian army out from the place, but Ukraine decided to cease this operation and withdraw the forces. The main objective of the operation, from what I may understand, was the deflection of attention of the Russian army from the other parts of the front lines. For example, from the southern part of Zaporizhia Oblast, which is bordering Kherson. Then for Ukraine it was crucial to protect the front lines out there, because by that time Ukraine was building defense lines. So again, I want you to understand, it wasn't the Russian attack today, no. The Ukrainian forces just were moved from the place, but still there are Ukrainian soldiers kept on the islands of the Dnipro River. If you check out Kherson direction, yes, there are many of the islands, some of them are controlled by Russian forces and some by Ukrainian forces. So there are no any bridgeheads any longer of Ukrainian army on this part of the shore. Here I think Ukraine also withdrew the forces. At first I got this information not from the media but from Ukrainian soldiers. So definitely they say that they withdrew the forces without any sort of the losses. It was the decision of the Ukrainian army command, and I think it was also connected to the recent dismissment of one of the Ukrainian generals. And the ex-commander of Marines is actually a butcher. I'm speaking about Yuri Sodol. He was the commander of the large group of Ukrainian forces. He was responsible for many of the directions, for example, Kharkiv direction, and also it was his idea to land the Ukrainian forces in Krynky and many other points across the Dnipro River in Kherson. And our Marines really suffered there a lot because the Russians used the aviation gliding bombs, and there was the period of time when Ukraine deployed the Patriot system, the air defense system, to cope with aggression from the Russian Air Force. At first everything was successful and Patriots shut down many of the Russian airplanes, especially Sukhoi 34s. I think you remember that time. Then Russia was losing like 3 airplanes per week. But after all, Russians were able to find the Ukrainian Patriot system launchers and hit at least 3 of those, using their standard scheme with surveillance drone and Iskander ballistic missile. So because General Sodol was removed from his position, I think that the Ukrainian military command decided to stop the operation in Krynky. Because actually for now there is no point to keep Ukrainian forces on the other part of the shore, because it will just bring losses to Ukrainian side. There is no perspective for now for Ukraine to advance from that bridgehead. So the only variant maybe is to keep the Russian forces out there, so Russia is unable to send those to the other directions. But now near this area, for example in Robotine was partially occupied by the Russian army, but here the front lines are quite stable for several weeks. And with the new military map update, we're gonna see everything of that turn to red. And you know guys, I remember then the Shoigu was the defense minister of the Russian Federation, and he reported to Putin that the forces of the Russian army already liberated Krynky. I think it was 4 or 5 months ago, something like that. So was this operation successful for Ukrainian army? Yes and no. It is hard for me to say because I don't know many of the details, but if the reason was to keep the Russian forces out there, to cause them losses in Krynky, well, this operation was successful. But on the other hand, if the idea of the operation was to make the bridgehead to advance to this road, well, it wasn't successful. Also, as I say to you, there were severe losses among Ukrainian Marines, especially after a few months then they took the part of Krynky, because Russia bombed every house out there, and it was really hard to hide because Russia used lots of the artillery shells and, as I say to you, aviation gliding bombs. So the saga or drama is over. For how long? Well, we're gonna see. Maybe also Ukrainian army needs its Marines for the other operations. My friends, if you like the job that I do daily on YouTube, you may also support me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is available in the video description just below. Thank you so much for your motivation. Then YouTube cancels monetization. Alright, but what is happening in the Kharkiv region? Well, Russia tried to get the forces, new reinforcements, and to attack Hleboka, but everything went not according to the Russians' plan. The Russian army didn't use lots of the vehicles, mostly they were infantry forces, but some tanks were sent, like for example this T-62, I think, converted into the Turtle tank. But nevertheless it was disabled by Ukrainian drone. This tank is rusty because it caught fire and all of the painting went off, and together with a high temperature the metal rusts right away, so it's not the old photo, no, it was the recent attack of the Russian army towards Hleboka village. Also, the weather influences the front lines. There is enormous heat wave now covers the most part of Ukraine and some other nearby countries like even Croatia, I think, and Slovakia plus Hungary. Well, anyways, the temperature is so high that it's impossible to sit in the heavy armored metal transport like tank or armored vehicle. So what do our soldiers say? The heat is enormous. Our enemies start to use vehicles just occasionally. Mostly they assault with infantry forces, and the Russian infantry have to cover 2 up to 5 kilometers on their own feet. In such a hot conditions, it's almost impossible task for them. So our guys keep positions on defense and mostly being supplied by drones. Our drones fly non-stop, dropping water, batteries, food and other supplies. Also, because of this heat wave, the chance for survival of the wounded personnel is lower than before. It is good that our sappers were able to mine vast fields in many of the points of the front lines. So Russians are unable to mine those fields because they're under the constant FPV fire, FPV drones, he meant. As for the recent deep state military map update, there were no any movement from the Russian army. However, at the same time, there were attempts from the Russian side to assault with their infantry. So because of this hot weather, in general, the intensity of the fights dropped. For the last 24 hours, the only place where Russia tried to move was in Kharkiv region, plus they still active in Bakhmut direction, trying to reach Chasiv Yar, but all of their attacks were repelled. Their advancement to Toretsk also slowed down, as well as in this bridgehead of Ocheretne. For the last 24 hours there was just a grey area expansion. Nevertheless, we see that Russia has the secondary vector of the attack, not just towards Vozdvizhenka, because probably there is the heavy Ukrainian defense lines. So Russia now tries to bypass Vozdvizhenka via the secondary villages to cross this tiny little river and to go to this crossroad. Reaching this crossroad is actually the main goal of the Russian army during the summer campaign, believe me or not. Yes, for the second army in the world, the crossroad is the big aim. Because reaching it, they will disturb the Ukrainian supplies for sure. Well, they already may disturb supplies because they can use many of the mortars and artillery systems against the Ukrainian supply road. Gasimov, a long time no see, probably the only big general left from the previous office. I mean, before the big reform of the Russian army started by Putin after he won the elections. Putin won elections, won sounds very strange in this case. Nevertheless, Gasimov was presented with a new brand technology of the Russian army, Niva, the vehicle which is, I think, 50 or 60 years old. But on the top they have the anti-drone protection, some of the electronic warfare, which sometimes doesn't work. Again, the Mad Max style of the Russian army, I wonder if those nets really may protect someone who sits inside. Here we see the China-made golf cart with a turret on the top. I never seen this kind of the modification. And obviously the Russian ground attack drones, which we saw just few times on the front lines, and mostly videos were filmed by the FPV drones, and you may understand what usually happens to those machines. For me, it's hard to say of what is this, probably some sort of the anti-drone system. Here's the simple ATV vehicle, and here's the China-made motorcycle. Motorcycles are definitely popular among the Russian army. My friends, there are many of the videos of how Ukrainian FPV drones able to hit those motorcycles. They don't have armor, they don't have anything to protect the soldier. That's why the outcome is well known. I want to come out with some sort of the new term. The Russian roulette term was already taken before, but I think that here the chances for the survival of the Russian soldier is even lower than in the game of the Russian roulette. I'll share some of the photos and videos on my Telegram channel, my friends. By the way, you may find it out in a video description just below. It is for free. On Telegram, me and my administrators update you with the recent information about Ukraine and around Ukrainian topic. I guess that this vehicle dealer tries to sell some crap to Gasimov. Yeah, crap is the usual thing in the second army in the world. Gasimov, where is Armata? Where is Sukhoi 57? Is it what you have right now? Niva with some of the meshes? Alright, finally we have the confirmation that Ukraine had used the cluster munition ATACMS missile to hit the Russian military airfield. You may say how it could be if Ukraine hadn't got the permission to use the ATACMS against the Russian military airfields. Well, actually this one in particular was on occupied territory of Ukraine in Melitopol. Well, actually Russia removed all of their airplanes and helicopters from this airfield, but they kept the air defense systems. And it was confirmed that Russia had lost at least 2 of those during the Ukrainian ATACMS attack. And this case shows that Ukraine is using the Russian tactics, which Russia used against Ukrainian HIMARS systems or even Patriots, basically flying the surveillance drone behind the front lines and aiming the long-range ballistic missile. For Russia it's Iskander, for Ukraine, as you may see, ATACMS. It means that this tactics is definitely very, very effective. Right guys, it seems like we have the latest military map update released just right now. Let's zoom to New York, for example, and let's check what happened out there. So yesterday and today. It's hard to say whether Russia even propelled forward. Well, they took this part of the ground, but they retreated from this side again yesterday and today. So from what I see, it's hard for Russia actually to move forward towards this village or the small town. And the deep state really tells that the enemy was pushed back in the area of Zavodska Avenue in the city of New York. Well, it's the town of the New York, it's different name, but anyways, it's the auto translation maybe. Plus they say that enemy advanced at the same village. So they're losing some positions, but at the same time they're able to gain some ground. And definitely we have the confirmation from the Miko 73, Ukraine assaulted from this side, from the west, and Russia moved towards north, taking several of the streets under their control, and also Russia has numerous on the different vectors. And I'm very happy that the Ukrainian army is still successful in New York direction. Lozovatske, let's check out the timeline yesterday and today. It's the big bridgehead of Ocheretine. As I told you before, it's the secondary vector of the Russian assault. They really moved towards this place, trying to advance at first to this road and then move to this very important crossroad. And Novoselica, Persia, well, it's just a matter of time, unfortunately, then Russia occupies this village, and by doing so they will open the way to reach all of this part of the ground, unfortunately. Plus Russia moved in progress area just a little over here, but it's not very significant, just a few meters were taken. So those are the only changes for today from what I can see. It's good that this update was released while I was filming the video. I just like to give you the most current information available. Well, there are not many news about politics today, especially the United States politics. The main news were yesterday. Then Donald Trump was announced by Republican Party to run for the president's position. Well, he also met with Boris Johnson, the ex-Prime Minister of UK, and Boris Johnson said that he spoke with Donald Trump. We discussed Ukraine, he said, and I have no doubt that he will be strong and decisive in supporting that country and defending democracy. Well, we know that Boris definitely supported Ukraine in many of the ways. I'm out of clue actually whether he was a good politician of UK or not. Many of my viewers say that not really, but he supported Ukraine, and it is good that we have this lobbying of Ukrainian interests. and Ukraine still remains the main topic for discussions. But judging on the other factors, I think that Trump really wants to negotiate with Putin about Ukraine. He wants to force Ukraine to give up its territories for the temporary peace agreement with Russia. At least the possible vice president that Trump chose, well, he is really anti-Ukrainian. But at the same time, he is not very consistent with his thoughts and words. He even called before Trump as the possible American Hitler, but now he supports him. So maybe the same scenario we should wait for Ukraine, but for now, it is not like that. So Donald Trump is really a risky candidate for Ukraine, for America, and for entire world. But for now, according to most of the polls, he's leading the campaign. You see that little by little, but candidates separate. Now there is the difference of 3% between them. Just the last week, the difference was 2%. So we'll see how it goes in the future, because with the crazy United States election system, it's hard definitely to predict. For example, as I remember, back in 2016, Donald Trump got less votes compared to Hillary Clinton. Nevertheless, Trump was elected as the United States president. I think that now it all depends on swing states. About the guy who tried to shoot the Trump, well, there is not much information available in internet, but it seems like that he was definitely bullied in the school or in other study facility. So this video emerged in internet. Let's watch it.
Stop.
So clearly here Matthew doesn't want it to be happening with his leg. He's in his smartphone quite busy, but someone grabs his trousers and some other female started laughing. So I think that 100% he was bullied in the school, because many of the other reports say the same story. So my version is the same. He's not the paid professional sniper or something. He's just a crazy guy with some psychological problems caused by society itself. And I think in my last video I already told more than enough about the bullying cases elsewhere. It's not just in the United States of America or something. But those bullying cases might have caused dramatic change in the world, actually, if Matthew hit his target precisely, but we see that he missed. But the counter-sniper group didn't miss Matthew. Yeah, for his action, definitely he is criminal, but at the same time, I'm very sad about Matthew personality. I mean, about him personally, because definitely society could be kind of cruel to the person who is not really fighting or be able to fight for the place in that society. Well, Matthew tried, but in a very strange way. And here we see the analysis of the Trump's head movement. Definitely, I think it was the miracle or something.
Take a look what happened.
Meanwhile, the ex-pro-Russian Ukrainian politician Medvedchuk already called the Trump's assassination as the attempt for Ukrainian Nazi regime to continue the war. Yes, it's the quote of this politician. Medvedchuk is Putin's friend, and his task was to implement the Russian peace in Ukraine, Ruski Mir, yes, but people didn't accept that. After all, he was caught, arrested, and later on exchanged for some of the Azov-style defenders and the commanders of the Azov regiment. And there is the story of Ukrainian hackers who hacked many of the Russian websites. And the actual Ukrainian military intelligence service claims the responsibility for this act. This is the operation of nearly 100 Russian websites. Instead of those websites' interface, they put the 404 number and also the pig's head in the colors of the Russian flag. Well, those attacks actually happen from both of the sides. Russia also has powerful hackers. I remember how Russians hacked Kyivstar, for example. It was really hard to restore it, and some data is just unrestorable. And Russia continued to send their T-54 tanks to the front lines. Those are very old machines, and from what I can say, there are no any modifications done to those tanks, which were probably built during the Stalin's period. And try to guess the direction where those tanks are being moved. Yeah, obviously not to museum, but to fight in Ukraine. Well, it tells that Russia is out of the modern munition, modern tanks. For the recent statistics which I checked, Russia lost at least 100 of their T-90 Emperor tanks. Yes, since the beginning of the war, but Russia has many more of the T-72 tanks and T-80 tanks, but even they burn quite well under Ukrainian FPV drone strikes. And from what I see, Russia goes all in. They want to show that they're still capable. They attack here, they attack there, but definitely they're out of the resources to continue the war with the present scale for a very long time. Well, maybe in 2025 they'll try to get the ground, but after it, no, Russia is doomed in Ukraine. They'll go fully for defense, and after all, Ukraine might take initiative. Yes, after a few years, but it might happen, with a good support from the Western countries and from our key ally, the United States of America. So now is the moment when Putin wants to show that Ukraine is incapable to win in this war, but Russia can forcibly occupy Ukraine, which is absolute nonsense. For this reason, this summer the Russian army experienced dramatic and record losses since the beginning of the war. And Russians continue to record the sad videos about their terrible situation on the front lines. For example, those are the Russian volunteers who were promised to serve at the third line of defense, so far behind the front line, the first line. But they were given with Kalashnikovs and delivered to fight right at the edge. During their first assault mission, they had losses, and 5 of the army men of their group were severely wounded. But the Russian army decided not to evacuate those back. Moreover, they say that there were no supplies of fresh water or food for their group. No accommodation given, nothing. They were just called to storm again and again. So now from 110 people of their group, only 25 are still alive. They admit that there were the cases that the wounded army personnel made it to the Russian hospitals, but it was just occasionally. They say that several times they experienced the friendly fire from the Russian artillery and mortars. They think that the Russian army purposely want to eliminate them. At the end of the video they say that we were volunteers, we signed the contracts with the Russian army to fight fascism, but in the end there is the fascism among us. Putin, help. Yeah, the Russian army is probably the worst place for anyone. But still, you know, they were volunteers and they deserve it. It is happening not just with those Russian soldiers. Many lose their lives. For example, here the wife of the Russian soldier, also probably volunteer, says that we are going to the railway station, and you probably know why. And just in a couple of days she say that Kola is dead. Kola is her husband. Kola just took the fastest possible express from the train station right into the coffin for 2 days. Hopefully drinks and food were included. Now my friends, I wish you all, and now my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. As usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.